Hi everyone, Benjamin Clementine here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Benjamin Clementine album, I Tell a Fly. This is the latest album from one of this decade's most enigmatic songwriters and performers, Mr. Benjamin Clementine, a singer, a composer, a pianist, hailing from the UK, who made a somewhat pretty big splash back in 2015 with his At Least For Now debut, on which he delivered these incredibly dramatic, regal piano ballads that were this exciting fusion of classical music and jazz and art pop and chamber pop and progressive pop. Some of the tracks on this thing were a little long-winded, a little winding, a little patience testing, but for the most part, Benjamin's songwriting was very on point. It showed incredible promise, and it also helped that his singing was so freaking bold and expressive. Even though I didn't love this record, I walked away from it feeling like Ben had a bright future. And that seemed to be the case going into this new album, because I really enjoyed teaser cuts like God Save the Jungle, as well as Phantom of Aleppoville. And another thing that excited me on my initial listens to these tracks is that his songwriting was coming off a bit more direct. It sounded like he was bringing more instrumentation into the fold. We were going to get more drums, more synths, more bass, more vocal overdubs, so yeah. And the result of that is that this latest crop of songs certainly sounds bigger and grander instrumentally. Sometimes it actually feels like Benjamin is kind of throwing in everything but the kitchen sink. And not just sonically, but structurally too, as tracks like Aleppoville feature these numerous phases and movements across the length of the song. However, in the case of this record, this is kind of one of those situations where more is kind of less, because the additional bells and whistles that Benjamin brings into the fold on this album, I think, often distracts from a track that could have been a bit more cohesive or consistent, a bit more focused. To mention the track Aleppoville another time, the song kicks off with these booming, heavy drums, very nice harpsichord arpeggios, some vocal theatrics, but then the track loses steam when it makes this sudden transition into these very slow, moody piano passages where Benjamin starts singing about his own experience with bullying, and I think he's trying to liken that to the situation in Aleppo or just bullying in international politics. It's not the most sensible comparison, nor are the lyrics that Benjamin uses at this point in the track incredibly profound. The track has a nice sentiment, but I feel like the execution leaves a lot to be desired. Even more the case for the song Paris Core Blimey, which doesn't seem to move past this stage of just a really lackluster narrative being delivered flatly over these really stagey pianos. And some of the deeper cuts on this record feature these looped, very groovy pieces of percussion backing nearly the entirety of the track, and much like Benjamin appearing on the new Gorillaz album, which had, some very punchy and very looped and very cycled production hanging in the background there, I feel like it just kind of saps the drama out of his singing and his performance, out of his song. In the case of Ode for Joyce or One Awkward Fish, there's so much going on, or at least it feels that way. You have these pianos, you have these bustling pieces of percussion, Benjamin singing, maybe a bass line, and none of it really feels all that connected. I feel like I'm listening to several different pieces from several different songs that have somehow just managed to be the same tempo and assembled into like a digital audio workstation and just bleh. And not that things are necessarily aesthetically pleasing when compositionally the songs are a bit more logical or have a clearer flow, like the song By the Ports of Europe, 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 which compositionally I think is one of the prettier tracks on this record, but the incessant By the Ports of Europe refrains on this thing just really come off as grating to me. They really do not they're kind of more annoying than exciting, though I can appreciate that Benjamin is trying to do something weird, something strange, something quirky with his voice. But Benjamin does have a very unique timbre to his singing, and I think layering so many of his own background vocals over themselves just kind of leads to a sound that's really kind of kooky and not in the best way. The record certainly starts off strong with Farewell Sonata and God Save the Jungle and Better Sorry Than Safe, which had this weird kind of fake fade out in the midst of the track, and then it just kind of, instead of fading out completely, goes back into an instrumental break, which a few other artists I could think of have done before. I think it's a pretty interesting idea. But overall, this album for me was really disjointed, whether that be the instrumentation on a particular track not really gelling all that well, or you have just a lack of consistency in terms of songwriting style from cut to cut to cut. This record, unfortunately, I thought was less dynamic than its predecessor, despite it having more instrumental layers, and the lyrics weren't really anything to write home about either. I didn't get that on the edge of my seat feeling, that hanging on every word feeling that I did on Benjamin's last album. And despite the fact that Benjamin is clearly trying to be theatrical on this album, this record falls short of the debut on that characteristic too. I'm mostly indifferent toward this thing, honestly. I could see hardcore fans enjoying it or finding it mildly pleasant, but really most of the good was completely canceled out by tracks that to me did not hit at all. Feeling a decent 5 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe, and please don't cry. Just leave a thoughtful comment down in the comments if you're feeling thoughtful. Over here next to my head is another Benjamin Clementine review. You can click on that, or you can click on the link to subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Forever.